Hello and welcome, my name is Tobel. This is a tutorial for U-Boat, a fantastic World War II submarine simulation. So this tutorial is for the version, I'm on Bravo 119, that is on May 11th right now. So some things may change after this point. I am using the unstable branch as well. So these are the settings that I'll be using for this tutorial, and without further ado, let's go ahead and pop right into it. This tutorial video is going to get broken out into different sections. It's going to be all in one video, but if you look in the more information area below, I will kind of break out the subjects I cover so that if you're looking for a specific thing like how to manually attack a fleet, please look to that section for more information. Welcome to U-96, the submarine that we'll be using during our adventure today. So this is the actual zoomed in view of the sub. You can see it's actually kind of a cool cutaway effect. So as you zoom in, you're able to kind of scroll through the ship to see the different compartments. Now, I'm scrolling with A and D on the keyboard. You can also use the mouse at the edge of the screen. Another way to control and move around the ship is actually by kind of possessing and taking control of one of your officers down here on the bottom. So if I go ahead and say I want to double click on West here, West is one of our engineers. Now he's currently doing a job, so we can't move him until we have him leave his position. So I'm going to say leave position, and then as you see, we kind of warp into first person view. So this is pretty much everything you'd like to, if you want to explore the ship, you can give them direct orders through the first person view or through the third person view. But I love running through the ship in first person. It's such a cool effect. I mean, the graphics are great. Well, okay, I don't know what's happening here, but either way, it's a really awesome view of everything. I really love all the attention to detail in all of the ships. And yes, you can do things like closing the hatch. You can change the lighting, for example, to red alert or to silent running. So lots of fantastic things you can do. You can go up to the conning tower as well. Right, I'll zoom back out, and this is our ship as a whole. If you want to, this is kind of the view that you might use as you're just kind of cruising around. So you can either zoom way out in kind of this tactical overhead view, and then once you get a certain distance away, you'll kind of go to that cutout view. So the ship itself, we've talked about how you move characters by possessing them, but if say I want to give my West guy, and we'll click on this little where am I button, and this is showing you where he's at in the ship. Well, if I want him, for example, to do a specific job, like say I want him to turn on the air compressor, the diesel compressor, which is going to give us more air. I can select him, right-click on the object, and then do that kind of activity. So he's going to run through the ship and go turn on the air compressor in this case. Now, there's some jobs that you may want to assign someone to do manually, so that's something to keep in mind. Maybe you'll want to have one of your, one of your personnel go into, for example, the cabinet here. You can right-click on the cabinet and open it, and then you can transfer things to that person. Now, they don't have to be there to open this up, but I believe in some cases they will go walk over to it. Right, so that is how to control your characters. Now, the cool thing is that by assigning them jobs, if we take a look at some of the crew management here, you will see that they have this little drop-down role. Now, some of them have a job by default. So the skipper, for example, has the watch officer role, and there are certain behaviors that the AI will try to do with this job descriptor. So the captain, as the watch officer, will try to use the best observation post available, and then he'll also try to deal with navigation if there's no post available. The Kohler here, he is our chief bosun. The bosun is kind of a morale officer on the ship. So the first thing he's going to try to do is always to make sure the discipline of the ship is as high as possible. So he might cook with the crew. He can also play cards with the crew and things like that. The radio man, same thing. He's going to be on, by default, I believe they always start on the radio, but you can also order him to use the listening room. And this is a good point to talk about the tab button. When you press tab, you get a kind of an overview of all of your officers. And if you hover over their picture, you get a really cool view of all the different jobs you can assign them. So this is a very easy way. So instead of, grabbing someone and then going through the ship to find a particular thing you want them to do, you can just hover over their name and tell them to go do something. So if the captain, if he's upstairs right now and I want him to come fill in at the hydrophone, I can give him that order. And you'll see that he's leaving the top of the ship, and he's going to come down through the ladder, through the conning tower, and go work on the radio, the listening room hydrophone. So pretty cool control. A lot of that's going to come in handy a little bit later on. So while we're talking about the crew, let's talk about their skills and kind of managing some of their needs. So let's go into the captain, for example. I'm going to click on that little eye symbol to zoom into the captain. And then I'm going to click on this character customization screen. And this is awesome because you can actually, my captain, my German captain, my German Navy captain wouldn't be complete without both binoculars and a pipe. So you can customize the character. You can also change, kind of what shirt they're wearing. For example, I believe that no good captain would be without their leather jacket. Now, you can also look at their skills to get a little bit of information. So these are kind of traits you can unlock as someone levels up. And you have they're kind of their role. There's either a leader, a radio man, or an engineer so far in the game. They also have a trait. Now, I think some crew members don't have a trait all the time, or that could be a bug currently in this build, but these different traits will do certain things, and it'll tell you in the bottom down here. So all the crew members generally will have both of course, a skill, which is right here. These are leaders, this is a radio man, and these two are engineers. The bar that you see underneath the character at the very bottom is kind of their alertness or their stamina level. So as you have someone doing a job, these characters are going to get tired over time. And now they will sleep on their own, but you may want to take a more active role in that because, if you're going out into the middle of combat, you might know the timing of how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B. So maybe you put some of the staff down for a nap or something like that to get their rest bars as high as possible before your conflict. Very important to manage the crew energy. There is additionally in the cabinet, and you can get this from the warehouse, there are some coffee cups here. So you can drink coffee to give your officer an energy boost of about 20%. There's also some other items here that you might want to take a look at. One of these, the breathing apparatus, is very important if you get struck underwater and you have a bit of a leak or you have toxic air in one of the compartments. You can give someone a breathing apparatus and they can try to do some repairs on that. So along with assigning someone a job from the tab menu, so for example, Adam Newman here is working on the radio, you'll see these little icons, these bars next to their face. This is how many crew members on the ship are assigned to help that officer. And depending on what the job is, you might get a boost to whatever you're doing. So if we look at the manage diesel engines role, it tells us that if we assign one sailor, all the gears are unlocked. Gears meaning your speed gears. So we would actually, if he's working on the engines, we'd have to have an assignment first in this example. But if we had at least one crew member assigned to help the Chief West here, we would be able to have all 5 speed gears, both in reverse and forward. The other thing for this particular role is that you would reduce the fuel usage by 30%. Also, the navigator role, as the officer, will also help you reduce some of your fuel expenditure. So when you're going from a very long travel adventure, if you're going from one port to your first mission, having 2 crew members working both on the engines and on the navigator's table will really drastically reduce the amount of fuel that is consumed by your ship. So we've talked about crew members on the ship. Let's go ahead and talk about how you get new crew members to your roster. So whenever you're in port here, there's always someone who will help you with recruitment. I have to select the skipper, and we can go talk to Wolfgang Meyer. And he's going to let us either hire a mix of crew members and then also some officers. Now, every port, I believe, in the game that's a friendly port has different quality and different number of officers. So here in this example, all the ones with kind of a basic hat, these are all crew members that you could have on your ship. Anyone who has the icon of an officer's hat will, of course, be an officer. Now, it's a bit buggy right now because, wow, nice shirt. You can see that everyone has the leader symbol, but I have had it where I've hired someone and they turned out to be a radio man. So that's probably going to get resolved later on, but this is where you could hire yourself an extra officer. And this comes in handy because right at the start of the game, for example, you start the game with 5 officers. And there's something to do with the headquarters that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, where you might want to look at recruiting a new officer right off the bat. So in order to assign who's working on your ship, we can go to the crew management button. You could also do that from talking to that guy over there on the dock. This is telling you how many crew are on board. We have 5 officers, 17 out of a maximum of 18 crew members. Now, I don't know if this is either an officer symbol, or it might be how many people are on board who've been awarded an Iron Cross. I actually don't know. The image matches up with the leader symbol, but there's no count. So I'm wondering if maybe this is how many Iron Cross recipients are on the ship. I'm not entirely sure yet, but you can see here that I've got 5 officers who have boarded. We can also assign ourselves 1 additional crew member right there who is now going to join us. Now, also, it looks like we have an officer to spare. Jürgen Schultz is off on the dock somewhere. He's not boarded the ship. So if I wanted to have 2 radio men on this trip, I could uncheck the box for Felix West, one of our engineers, and then I could check the box for Jürgen Schultz to take his place, because you can see we have a maximum of 5 officers. You can increase the amount of officers on your ship, by the way, through a favor. You earn favor by doing really well in your missions and your patrols. So if we go into the favor menu, if we happen to have favor, we could unlock some of these different specialties. So we could try to have the maximum amount of officers on board to 6, and then finally 7 if you have that much reputation built up. A couple other things here like running mission in the headquarters. And since we're going to talk about the headquarters, let's move over to that. So the headquarters is where you go to do certain types of missions. Now, one of the things I want to show you, let's go to the warehouse before I do this, and it's going to make more sense. So if we want to say upgrade our ship from the quartermaster here, let's go to the upgrade ship. And let's say that we wanted to upgrade the hydrophone that we use on this ship to the next level, from the standard hydrophone to the KDB. Well, it obviously costs money, so this has cost 8,000 of our currency. We only have 6,000, but also it says that research to unlock this upgrade is available in the headquarters. So you actually have to unlock it before you even try to buy it. To unlock research, you have to go into the headquarters, which you can access through the menu here in headquarters. And this is where you give certain missions. This is kind of like the Kriegsmarine headquarters. You can see everybody typing away at their Enigma machines. You can click on this Start a New Operation, and you see an overview of Europe. Now, all of these different symbols represent a type of mission. So military stash, for example, might give you, I think it gives you credits or money. The other ones are reconnaissance, so it'll tell you what the defenses of a certain port are. Now, the research symbols are all the different things you can unlock for your ship. Now, some of them give you a better torpedo, like right here, this gives you a new torpedo, for example. This research will give us snorkels, which lets us use our diesel engines while underwater. So very, very helpful indeed. Now, to do this mission, you can see here that it requires an engineer. Some of the other missions might require someone else. So this mission requires a leader type, which is like the captain or the XO. This mission, where'd it go? I think it is hydrophone, would require a radio man. So I think we left ourselves an engineer on the dock. So if I find a mission with an engineer, which is the snorkel mission, I can click on engineer and assign someone who's currently off the ship, which is, these are all the people who are not on board the ship right now. So Felix West fits the bill. He is an engineer, so we can select him, accept the mission, and he'll start working on that job. Now, some people have traits that will speed up the performance of their headquarters mission, so make sure you keep an eye out for the trait of expert, I believe it is. It'll decrease the time needed by 35%, so that's very, very huge. The research does take quite a long time, so normally I try to start the research before I even leave my first patrol, so it's ready for when I come home. So before we set sail, we've covered the crew, we've talked about the headquarters a bit, and I have 2 radio men on board, and I think that's just a fine compliment for this mission. By the way, since I did take our chief mechanic away, or our chief engineer, I'm going to reassign my Loris here, my engineer Loris, to the chief engineer role. It really just changes a couple of his performance or his AI decisions. So he'll try to work on the engine instead of preparing torpedoes. And sometimes if you want them to automatically do things, you can just kind of change that role and they'll try to prioritize different things. So you can experiment with the different AI roles that are in place there. Before we leave dock, we both need to have a mission, and we also probably want to check on our supplies. So let's get our captain here, Graf, and we'll talk to our kind of the officer from the Admiralty, and he's going to give us our first mission. So you get missions in different difficulty tiers. So either, I don't know, I've never really seen that a high difficulty mission is all that hard in terms of the ships inside of it. I think it's just that it's more distance traveled. So this mission, for example, is a low difficulty patrol mission. We only have to travel 2,000 kilometers inside of the sector, while sector CG requires us to travel a little bit farther inside of that sector. So you have to get to the sector and then travel a certain distance once you're in the sector. So we're going to take this hard mission here, sector CG, and accept that. And finally, before we set sail, we're going to go talk to Hans in the warehouse and kind of check on our supply status. So here are all the supplies that are on our ship and that we could be purchasing. Here we go. So we have 40 units of exotic fruits. We have some cheese on board. That should get us through our first major patrol. We also have some med kits and spare parts, which are going to be very handy. Spare parts, of course, are what you're going to be using in case you happen to break anything through damage. So if you get depth charged, unfortunately, on your mission, you'll be able to try to repair some of maybe your broken, your broken periscope or radio or something like that. We also have these interesting potassium absorbers. You can put these into kind of an air generator, and it'll help kind of remove the carbon dioxide from the air. We might talk about that when we go silent later on in our mission. So I think we're pretty much good on fuel. Food. We need food for the ship itself, so we're going to go ahead and fill up on fuel here. For some reason, when you start the game, you only start at like 87% fuel capacity. So we're just going to grab up to the top. Doesn't cost us much money whatsoever. We also have a good amount of torpedoes. Now, when you first start the game, you might actually have a full complement of torpedoes, but your engineers might start loading the torpedo tubes while you're still in dock. So it might not be a bad idea to just wait a bit for all of your torpedoes to be loaded, and then you can go ahead and buy yourself some replacement torpedoes. And so that way you kind of get, you already start the game with your torpedo tubes loaded and a full complement in storage. Otherwise, we've got a couple items here like coffee, very, very important. I'll go ahead and grab myself a couple stacks of coffee. Fuel, we are all set. Ammunition, now we already do have some, I think we have other ammo in the guns itself. I believe we have armor-piercing ammo. But I'm going to grab a bit extra HE small caliber ammo in case we need to use our deck gun to shoot up any ships that we get really, really close to. Oh, I'm actually almost broke. So let's just get a couple of those rounds. I've got about 600 credits worth, or whatever that currency is. So we'll just grab 620 rounds of small caliber. You can see here that we have a large caliber HE ammo, which is for the deck gun itself. Right, so I think we're all nice and supplied. We have our mission from the Admiralty. We also just had a radio transmission from headquarters, which I will click on, and it leads you over to whoever's on the radio, and then you can click on that to have them translate the message or decode it. We also can assign a crew member to that person to help them translate that message a bit faster. I'm going to speed things up by pressing the middle mouse button here. Middle mouse acts as your time compression shortcut, so it really speeds up how long it takes you to do certain things. Here's our translated message, just a bit of a message from headquarters. It does say that your standing orders to patrol a certain sector. However, we also have information and intel that there is a freighter here that has crucial technology that must be sunk. So if we go over to our map by pressing M, by the way, your map comes in 3 flavors. There's kind of a world view, which just gives you all the locations that you can go to. There's also a tactical map, which is very, very far zoomed in, and then kind of a hybrid. So you can zoom from the world map all the way down to your ship. And I normally keep it on this hybrid map. So our mission is to come off here to the western coast of Spain and by Gibraltar. And the specific mission that we were just given, so we have 2 missions. We have, patrol this sector of water, but we also have find and sink the Empire Tower type of ship in this particular group. So it's kind of giving us radio intel updated about the location of the ship. So without further ado, let's go ahead and set sail. The first thing I'm going to do is go to my telegraph and give us a speed order of 1. I'm also going to make sure that my rudder is at 0 so that I don't kind of bash into the dock here. And I'll press middle mouse to kind of start the time compression to speed things up. And as we get out into open water, I'll go back to the map view here and give myself a right-click order roughly on the coast of Spain. The cool thing is that if you're in straits like this, you can see that the navigator has given us an order around a landmass, so they didn't try to run us through an island here. But otherwise, we're pretty much in good shape. This is the start of our voyage. Everyone is ready to go. We've got all the supplies we need. Crew discipline is very, very high, and we'll talk about these items here as we go. All right, so we are on our way, and it's no better time to talk about controlling your ship than right now. So we'll do a little bit of maneuvering here while we're still inside of this port on the western coast of France. So we're going to pull down our telegraph, and I'm going to give an order to speed the ship up. Now, if you look here, you can see that the 5th gear of speed is grayed out. That's because we have no crewmen assigned to help out the engineer on their job. So if you can see here that the default message says an officer manages diesel engines, unlocking the 4th forward gear. If we assign 1 crew member to help him out, you'll see that now we've got that 5th gear ready to go. I am going to assign 2 crew members to assist our navigator, and I think that's pretty much it. I will assign 2 crew members here for my engineer to get that fuel usage reduction. That way you're saving a bit in fuel, because if we look up here across the top at our different resources, it's estimating that at our current speed, we're going to be using 11 diesel, is 11 per minute, basically, the amount of fuel consumed. So we have 9,900 kilometers left in this usage. Now, if I speed up a bit, it's going to change the calculation involved and tell you how far you could go on flank speed, for example. You can also switch to switch to electric engines here by using the other option. And that's going to start using your electric charge and save your actual fuel itself. So when I do a mission, I generally kind of go a little bit on electrics down to maybe about halfway. And then I switch back over to diesel engines to finish charging up your battery. Now, we assigned ourselves a kind of a course here by right-clicking on the map. So you definitely saw how that worked. if I go back into first-person view, you can order your ship around by just right-clicking on the view somewhere on the water ahead of you and giving yourself an arc around your ship to change your heading. So if we want to go, say, 30 degrees to the starboard side, we can hold the right-click and drag that to the right. By the way, super secret of naval terminology here, the word port, left side, has 4 letters, and the word left has 4 letters. That's how you can know the difference between port and starboard. Perfect. 4 is up front, and aft is in the back, if you like a little bit more naval terminology. Right, so we've given order to rotate our ship about 30 degrees to the starboard side. I'll do that one more time to make it even tighter turn. So here's our speed that we can change, and we can also change the rudder through right-clicking there, or you can give a rudder command on this side. Although the fact that I just gave them an order to, you know, X amount of degrees on the right, that will start to correct itself as they reach the required, you know, angle. So if you just go give this a hard over 35 degrees, our ship will basically continue to turn in circles until you tell them otherwise. So I don't want to have them do that. I'm going to go ahead and straighten it out once we get to open land. Right about here is fine. So about 15 degrees, starboard side, and we'll straighten everything nice and out. Right, so we are underway. Now I want to see if we can start diving down. This is your depth meter or your depth order, you know, system. You're telling someone to dive. Before we do dive, though, I'm going to press M, zoom in on my ship. Now, this is a bit of a cheaty, you know, system here. If I hover under my mouse, in the upper right-hand corner here, you're seeing information about this area. And you're seeing here that there is really not a whole lot of room under the keel of our ship. And if we actually go underwater, you'll notice that the ground is very, very close to the bottom of our ship. So I don't want to give myself an order yet to go to periscope depth, although I'm pretty sure we could submerge down to at least hull down, where you're covering the front of the top of the hull. We could probably get down there pretty close to the bottom of the bay. We'll wait on depth until we're a little bit farther out. So we've got a little bit more room now according to the map. It looks like there's about 11 or 12 meters of space underneath our keel between the water line and the base of the seabed that we're currently over. Another really cool thing you could do, let me zoom into somebody who's inside the ship. Here, come on and hop out of bed here, Jurgen. I want you to go into the control room. There is a sonar, and kind of an active depth meter here. It is the echo sounder. So if I click on this, it's going to give me an information about how deep the water is below us. So it's exactly 17 meters below us right now. If we right-click on it, we can actually do a deep ping, which will, you can use the deep ping when you're in a bit of deeper water. So if you're out in the middle of the ocean and you want to know how much, you know, space is below your ship, you can do the deep ping. I think it does a measurement limit of 1,000. It is detectable for nearby enemies, but the shallow ping is not. So it can, it's unable to detect the seabed, though, at over 125 meters. So if you're kind of in that zone between 125 meters and below, if you want to know if you're about to scrape the ground, that might be a good time to manually come over here and use the echo sounder. All right, let's go ahead and give an order for our ship to submerge. I'm going to go into the depth meter, and I'm going to use these shortcuts here. So this is basically periscope depth, which is about 8 meters in depth. So we've given the order to go down. Everyone is coming off of the conning tower, and you can see that we're starting to break into the water a little bit more. Now, when you're diving, you can also give your engineers an order to manage the dive planes, which is kind of cool. Managing the dive planes will help you to both maintain your depth evenly, preventing the ship from kind of bouncing out into the surface. It'll also speed up the rate at which you are descending. So having someone on depth control, they'll actually be here in the conning tower sitting at the bench and kind of making sure these guys don't screw anything up. They'll help you keep the ship nice and even, especially when you're on approach to your enemy and you're trying to stay invisible. We'll talk more about the visibility section here in a little bit. Right, so we are now underwater. Our captain, whoever is on the watch officer job, immediately changed from the deck observation job to the attack periscope. So now we can kind of click on him, see that he's using the periscope. We can zoom in and kind of see what they're looking at, which is really, really cool. So if we change this is the bearing of your ship, by the way. So 0 degrees is in front of our ship. If we actually bring the scope down, you can see the bow of our U-boat. So you can extend or basically raise or lower the periscope with this information on the left. Now, from what I've found, the attack periscope has a pretty high coverage. It's really far out of the waterline. You also have an observation periscope, which is back into your main control room. So this was the conning tower, by the way, that we were in. The conning tower is up there. This over here, oops, sorry, it's right behind me. This is your observation periscope. So your observation periscope, from what I understand, I don't think it quite has the height that the attack periscope does. This one's more for a very quick, what's around me kind of a thing. So as you can tell here, this is the water line against the periscope, and the periscope's basically at this depth. So maybe using the, let me go back to my depth section here. Maybe using the deck awash setting is a little bit better for when you're trying to use the observation periscope. That way you're a little bit more shallow, but you can still dive quickly if you need to. So I think when you're on deck awash, here it is. So yeah, the whole deck is underwater, but you're kind of able to surface and lower down much quicker than you would normally be able to do, right? So I don't think anyone's able to get to the conning tower though when you're in this depth. Alright, so we've covered some of the controls of your ship. Now this is mostly just an overview. You'll find some more fine-tuning options available to you as you kind of experiment. By the way, as we surfaced here and we were underwater, we have to basically fill the air bladders inside of the ship with air. You're kind of blowing water out of your ballast tanks. And by doing that, you're using some compressed air from your tank. So you'll notice that whenever you surface, you'll always get this message about compressed air reserves are low. So what I could do is take my engineer here and then right click on either of the compressors in the back to start filling up those air tanks. So obviously if you're trying to be stealthy, you might want to use the electric compressor over the diesel compressor. So we're going to talk about what happens as you're starting to go towards your target. So let's go back to our map and assign ourselves the order of going near Spain. All right, so our navigator gave us a really nice line to get over to Spain. The ship will kind of adjust itself. I'm going to make sure that our speed is as fast as possible. Now, the fact that I did leave one engineer off the ship, I kind of like having 2 engineers at the start, more so than 2 radio men. So I just did that as an example, but you'll see that we're going to struggle a little bit with different jobs. So this engineer is going to be quite busy while we're doing our mission. So he's a little tired right now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and give him an order to sleep. It also looks like the captain is automatically sleeping. The navigator needs a break too. Kind of our executive officer, Hilbert Kohler here. And finally, Newman, our radio man, is also tired. So they kind of automatically sleep and rest when they need to. But it looks like Schultz here, who is one of our radio men, he's pretty good to go. So I'm going to use the radio for a bit. Now, as you're traveling from point A to point B, there's a couple things that you'll have to keep in mind. Now, you can go really fast by using time compression, right? So that's going to speed things up quite dramatically. And by the way, we can actually see another ship over here, kind of like we might see a smokestack, or we might have seen them and spotted them since we left. This is pretty friendly territory, so I'm pretty confident that this is not a threat at the moment. If you ever have a message that you need to send back home to your headquarters, it'll pop up here as well in this corner. So visual contact spotted. You can click on that message, and your radio officer will send the message back home. One of the other things that I do when I'm crossing the ocean, I do tend to have a lot of crew members assigned to officers. And if you look at the discipline menu, you're seeing here that there's apparently too much work from officers, which is kind of funny since, that's their job to be on a submarine. But to keep them happy, there's a couple things we can do in terms of morale. So we can have someone like the chief bosun here. We can have them doing a job like playing cards or cooking. You can only cook, by the way, if you have the cooking trait in your skill list. So this one is just kind of a hobby for him. So he enjoys cooking, so he will, bond with the crew from that. So there's 2 other ways to raise morale that are pretty important. Now, the first is you can go into the galley, right-click on, sorry, I have to actually select someone here. Right-click on the galley and do open storage room. Now you can see here the galley is currently stocked with cheese, so our chef is, cooking nothing but cheese. We can click on the storage room and remember that we had exotic fruits as well, so I'm going to transfer in a bunch of exotic fruits, and now our person's going to come pull those out of the storage unit and put them into the galley. And because we have different plates here and different types of foods, when the crew starts to eat, you'll see that they get a pretty huge boost from having multiple things available in the galley. The other way to keep your crew members happy is to go to the radio man and just tune into one of the radio stations that you have access to. So Radio Gibraltar here, or Radio La Rochelle. Is this La Rochelle or La Roche? I'm not really familiar with French pronunciation, so I apologize if I butchered that. But yeah, now if we hover over discipline, you can see that we're getting 20 discipline. I don't know if it's percentage or what, but you can see we're getting plus 20 per minute because we had varied dishes, and we get plus 10 per minute from having good music. So that's one real easy way to kind of overwork your crew and keep them happy at the same time. So morale is a big thing you have to keep in mind as you're traveling. Also, rotating your officers to stay rested. Somebody actually just got off the radio. If you heard that little sound effect, that was the radio man getting up off of his radio. He's walking back to the radio now. That's a little walking symbol. We'll tune back into one of the radio stations. Now, the most important thing I would suggest when you're traveling the ocean is, let me turn the radio off for just a bit, is to make sure you've got someone doing navigating. Because if you don't have anyone on the navigation role, I think it's for like half a day, you will wind up lost and you'll be unable to see yourself on the map in relation to anything until someone does the navigator's job and basically finds your position using, sun and stars and things like that. So very important to keep, wow, actually just like that. We are lost because apparently nobody was on the navigation station. I thought he was, but maybe I'd given him a different role. So let's put Klaus Graf onto fix ship position. And you'll see if we hover over it, we are lost. Officer is determining our position on the map again. If we assign some sailors, you'll see that the speed of fixing this position is very increased. So we'll assign him 2 crew members to assist with that. And otherwise, it's not too big of a deal, honestly. It's not the worst thing in the world. I have had this kick off right in the middle of a fight before, so it's a bit awkward that it, suddenly you don't know where you are in relation to the world. But you can always stick with your tactical map and know where you are in relation to things that you see around you. So you're not exactly completely, utterly blind. All right, so our captain has just about fixed our position on the map, so we should be getting that back momentarily. And yeah, sure enough, funnily enough, we actually lost the direction we were originally going. We were navigating down south, but because of the currents and because we didn't know where we were, we wound up traveling in a different direction for quite a long way. So maybe when you get yourself lost, it might not be a bad idea to go ahead and slow down the ship or completely stop until you're able to locate your position. But we are a little bit closer to the transport mission. Thankfully, that transport moved out of our zone, but closer to us. It's heading over to the United Kingdom. So we will head towards our target. Now you can see here a bunch of people are resting, but it looks like they're pretty much good to go. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to manually give my Loris guy, my engineer, the role of mechanic. Because when he's a mechanic, he will automatically start working on things like warming up torpedoes or making sure that all of the torpedo tubes are loaded. Sometimes when they are sleeping, they get a little bit stuck. So what I've seen is that you can zoom into them, tell them to leave their position, and then they'll start doing their jobs if there are any to be done. There we go. He's going to go load the aft torpedo. Newman here, I can have him leave his position, although there is somebody on the radio, but what I can do is, I think if I give someone the technician job, so let's cancel both of their jobs and see who does what. So you're a technician, so you're going to jump onto the radio. You're also apparently going to listen to the radio too. I kind of wish that was a little bit, well, more defined. So I want somebody on, say, the hydrophones, but I also would like somebody on the radio at all times. So I try to keep both of my radio men very well rested when we're getting close to combat, because both mostly the radio man, or sorry, the sonar operator is very, very important. But he's a little bit tired right now, so we're going to give him an order to go ahead and take a bit of a nappy. There we go. So you're going to get a little bit of a nap. You can see the captain is getting pretty tired. The first officer is okay. There is a bit of micromanagement here, but by and large, if you let them go do their own thing, they will eventually get their own rest. You just have to be really cautious when you're in kind of a fight, because that might be, they might be exhausting themselves, and that reduces, I believe, their overall performance level. So it might reduce how fast they give you your targeting solution and, move your ship around, things like that. So we're pretty much good on fuel. We've got all these people assigned to help out when possible. If somebody's helping on the navigation side, so they're reducing our fuel amount. By the way, it's pretty easy to see how much fuel you're going to use. Obviously, we have to travel at least 2,500 kilometers inside the region. It's going to take us about, let's see, if we went this to here, it's going to take us about 1,000, we'll call it about 1,500 kilometers to get back home at this point. So, we got plenty of fuel for this mission. I normally run my ship on anywhere from standard speed here on 3 all the way up to full or flank speed. But for the moment, let's go ahead and intercept our transport group, and I'll start talking about other ways to detect your enemies. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign someone as the sonar operator. And the cool thing, or the hydrophone, sorry, you can assign someone to the hydrophone, and it's actually really strong, even when you're on the surface, even in a random area of the world, because your officer will start hearing contacts all over the ocean. So you'll start getting information on propeller noise and things like that. So it's very, very helpful, especially once you're in your target quadrant, to have someone on the sonar, the hydrophone, because they're going to try to listen for other ships. And I mean, you'll be able to hear things clear across your region. So very helpful to find big patrols. I think they might do a little bit better if they have, in fact, I went down to a speed of 1, and we immediately picked up new propeller noise all the way over here. So they'll be picking up more and more of those as they go. So I've sped the ship up, and we're going to talk about intercepting different types of contacts. So we have a tiny group here. It is a 2 to 4 size group. This is the target mission. So it's giving us a constantly updated location. The propeller noise is what we actually hear because of our hydrophone operator. I'm going to go ahead and put the captain down for a bit of a rest, and we'll use Hilbert here to maintain navigation for a bit. I will go over to someone who can use the sights here in a bit. It also looks like they're a bit faster than we are, so I'm going to adjust. And if I was really smart, what you can do is say, let's take a tool here on the map. Let's use the marker tool. And we know that roughly right now, the marker is here, right? If I wait a little bit, my map is kind of zooming with me, so it's rotating. We can also pause the game again, go to where the dot is, put another point down, use the ruler symbol, start at point 1, go through point 2. Really, you probably want 3 dots to help you get exactly what course they're on. But by using this right here, we've established roughly what course they're following. So I know that I'm going to intercept them at their current speed. They're a little bit faster than we are, so I'm going to aim for an intercept somewhere closer to up here. So I'm using shift right click, by the way, to give multiple orders. Also, I don't really want my engineer here warming up the torpedoes right now. I want him to work on the diesel engines so we can unlock gear number 2 and gear number 3 of the engine. So he's walking over there. They're still a little bit farther than we are. All right, we're going to move up to flank speed. We're getting really, really close as well, so I'm going to go ahead and assign someone to the observation. We'll go ahead and do the targeting site because we are on the surface. So there are crew members who are always kind of just on spotting duty up top, but having an officer up there will help out and increase the range drastically, especially if we assign crew members to help him out. All right, we're getting really, really close, so I'm going to start cutting into where I think the enemy is going to be at. We've gone from the fast travel mode of the open ocean to the fact that we're now very, very close to our mission. I'm going to adjust my course here a little bit like this. And it also tells you, as you can see, my sight bubble is expanding because the captain is up on deck along with a bunch of spotters. So this is roughly telling you, where you're able to get your sight line from. Now, this is more of, from here on out, it's kind of your matter of preference. You can either do I would say this is kind of a more dangerous approach in the broad daylight, staying on the surface and just kind of hoping that you can go to periscope before they spot you. The smarter thing to do would more than likely be to submerge. And why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's go down to periscope depth. I'm going to reduce our speed to about full. Unpause the game. So the captain's going to come down off the forecastle. I'm going to also go and change my orders from navigator station over to the attack periscope for the first officer. I'll let my captain get a bit of rest as well. Now, when you go into alarm, I think you start to get, we're not quite in alarm mode yet. When we go red alert is when we actually spot some kind of enemy. Your crew morale starts to go down quite a bit. You also could see there when we went down and we submerged, the course was adjusted. Remember, the dot was right here. We actually just picked them up on sonar on this area right here. So we've got a little bit of ground to cover. I'm going to go ahead and erase the marks that I made before. What I'm going to do is show you both the approach to attacking with both the automated AI assisting you as well as a manual calculation. So do I have someone on my hydrophones? You are listening on the hydrophones right now. I'm going to kind of slow down a bit. Okay, there is the range that we can detect ships using the hydrophone. Let me stop it real quick and see if that range extends out pretty far. That's about as far as we can go. We are seeing chimney smoke, though, so that means that there is a target somewhere. It's funny, it seems that we picked up 2 separate groups. This is our main target. This is another group that's randomly going by, which could be a freighter. It might be, a cruiser or a frigate on its own. All right, let's go ahead and change over to our electric engines and go up to flank speed. All right, so I sped up a little bit, mostly because it was kind of a really long compression time. So I went on the surface and kind of sped things up. So you'll notice a couple things here. So right off the bat, we've got 3 freighters off in the distance. These are my targets. Now, it looks like we're in a really bad spot, but keep in mind, these are basically freighters. These are merchant-class ships that don't have a ton of crew dedicated to outspotting your vessel. So if we hover over our icon, it does say that we're 97% visible right now. However, we're undetectable due to either their range or their skill level. So the chance of you being detected will appear here as a percentage as you get closer and you're on the surface of the water. So first things first, I'm going to go into and zoom into their ships. I'm going to go ahead and erase my old point. I want to get a rough idea of what course they're going. Now, if I click on their information, we don't really know much about what's going on these ships. We're kind of getting, I think we're getting passive information just by observing them with our periscopes and with our equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is the center target. We're going to mark the rear of the ship from the drop-down view. Then I'm going to unpause the game, and after a couple of, in fact, what you could do if you're really, really fancy, you could get yourself a stopwatch and time how long it takes the target to move in about, say 60 seconds. You can also do some of your own calculations, which is honestly pretty freaking cool, if you ask me. But we're going to just mark them for a bit, just so I know roughly what course they're going to follow. Now, I don't want to come in at an oblique angle. I want to come in as perpendicular as possible to their, I guess, their direction of travel. I want to have a nice wide target. When I shoot my torpedoes, I want to have as much hull in my periscope as possible. That way my torpedoes have as much surface area as possible to strike, if our calculations are correct. All right, so we are going to start moving perpendicular to their fleet. Now, at some point, as we get closer, I will go down to periscope depth and make our approach a little bit more sneakily. But we're at a really good spot right now to observe the enemy. So if we want to start building information about the fleet, we can start clicking on the ships and giving people orders to look at them. If we click on our officer, you can see here that he's already collecting information on all contacts automatically. So you're seeing here that he is, if we talk about these ships, we're getting different targeting solutions on these ships. So we happen to know that this is an N-A1, a November Alpha 1 class freighter. This over here is still unknown. Now, if I want someone to focus on this ship, I can give the targeting solution list, and then I can give it an order. I can give an order to one of my crew members. So we are undetectable right now. The other thing I want to keep in mind, our compressed air reserves are a bit low. So while we're on the surface and while we're not exactly trying to be super stealthy in terms of noise, I'm going to order my engineer back to the diesel compressor, turn that back on so we can start filling our compressed air tank in the event that we surface or we have to surface again after a bit of time. All right, so I'm going to keep the game unpaused. I'm going to slow things down just, just a notch is fine. If the percentage starts to climb up here, that's when I'm going to start going underwater. Now, it's very risky where I'm at. Probably the smarter thing to do would be to go underwater. However, you have to keep in mind that you only are carrying a certain amount of oxygen on the ship. So I tend to try to dive at the very, very last minute. Also, you'll notice that our discipline is constantly going down because we are in the alarm. Now, the bounty hunt is when you're actually only trying to hunt down some enemy ships. So the bounty hunt is canceling out the alarm discipline reduction. However, because you have a lot of people assigned to different roles, everyone's just a little bit grumpy. So I'm actually going to pull some people off of the jobs right now. And there we go. So the discipline is a nice steady 98%. I'm going to try to keep that as much as possible even. You also can see here now that we have a 3% chance of being spotted. So I will go ahead and give the order to go down to periscope depth. I've waited for a little bit of time to pass because the fleet is pretty much almost at my 90-degree angle. Now, the interesting part here is that after kind of looking at it for a bit, I'm a little concerned that if I launch a 90-degree attack that I would normally want to do, there's a very high probability that these other vessels, like if we're targeting the Liberty, for example, there's a good chance that the Liberty, the torpedoes heading toward the Liberty, will get intercepted by this Empire Tower or this November Alpha 1 ship. So what I'm going to do is actually do a little bit of navigation around the fleet. And remember, it's not too hard to do. You're not exactly trying to fight the entire British Navy here. They don't really have good sonar capabilities. I would be very cautious against surfacing near these ships because the Liberty, if we take a look, let me raise my periscope up just a bit. Oh, it just snapped into place. The Liberty here is a ship that has its own forecastle gun and a gun emplacement on the aft as well. So Liberty merchant ships can completely defend themselves against a surfaced U-boat. So do not surface against a Liberty unless you are 100% sure that that ship is disabled and they will not be attacking you. You can do the identification, by the way, using this cool, handy identification booklet. The booklet will show you a silhouette of these different styles of ships, and they're all kind of facing one direction. So what you're supposed to do is basically compare all these different silhouettes with what you're looking at right here. And obviously right away you notice that this has 3 main masts here with all these arms sticking out to the side. It also has one central command center and then a fore and an aft kind of a section of an emplacement. So right away the Liberty jumps right out, and there's not a whole lot else in the game right now. There are some battleships, things like that. I think that's actually a carrier back here. The Illustrious, is that a carrier? I believe so. So once you have the ship that you think it is, you can just recognize that vessel there. I've swung around the rear of this formation here, so we're kind of approaching the Liberty from its port aft quarters. Now, I did notice as we're kind of swinging around that our oxygen is actually super, super low. So there's a few things that we can do about that. First off, if you are in a situation where you think you're going to be underwater for kind of an extended period of time, it might behoove you to turn on the blue lighting. This kind of sets a silent running along the ship. And what it'll do, if we look at our oxygen consumption, is reduce the consumption by 15%. That's number one, super useful overall, especially once you have a full tank of oxygen. However, we're already pretty low. So if we turn on this device called the ventilator, you'll see that it's giving us about 6 ventilation per minute. Not super great. It does increase, I think, over time as you get more and more air cleaned up. But what we can do to improve the results of this, go to the storage room and grab all of these potassium absorbers. Go back to the ventilator, click on the inventory. I right-click there to pull up the full menu and drop them off. Now, if we go out, we're going to notice that the oxygen production is up to 103 per minute. So you're going to be getting more of a bang for your buck while using those, the potassium absorbers. And that way you don't have to keep this on long, because it does give you some noise. If we check our noise level here, you can see that the ventilation is giving an additional 96 decibels as well. So it is making things quite noisy. It's also using up a lot of your electricity. So by using something that makes the ventilator more effective, you're running it for a short amount of time and kind of getting more oxygen to your ship. We are parallel with the target fleet now. So there's obviously a couple calculations that are going into the game. Let's go ahead and zoom out here a bit. My captain, I think we've got our periscope down. So let me go ahead and raise the periscope back up again. So you'll see here that we've got the hydrophone circle. Therefore, our hydrophone operator can start gathering information on these ships. And they've already been doing that since they're kind of, they've been active and we've been around these ships for quite a long time. Now, this ship that we've identified as the Liberty, or a Liberty-class vessel, doesn't have any automatic calculations done. It's super easy to do the automatic calculations, by the way. All you do is you assign someone by going to the open targeting stations list and assigning someone who is kind of within whoever's using a device that has the target within it, right? So because they're both within our sight range and our hydrophone range, we can assign both of these officers. And if we put somebody on the observation periscope, we'll wait for him to walk there, you'll see that we can also add Hilbert Kohler to that list as well. So everyone's helping out and doing their own calculations. Now, what I would like to do for fun is let's go ahead and go back over to the captain. And in fact, you know what? Captain's a little bit tired. I'm going to tell the captain to take a wee bit of a break, and I'm going to give Hilbert Kohler the job of going to the attack periscope. What else did I want to do? I want to swap out my sonar operator because he's also getting a little bit sleepy, because we're about to go on the attack, so I want everyone to be as fresh as possible. Right, let's go ahead and zoom into our attack periscope, extend the periscope up a bit, zoom it out, so I can flip it around. For some reason, we're pointed at the wrong angle. And here we go right here. So we're currently locked on target with this vessel. If we want to unlock it, I think you can just press E when you're looking at it in a certain way. It doesn't allow me to do that right now, so apparently not. Sometimes you can just press E. There it is right there. So this vessel's going about 9 knots. I'm going to slow down a bit. We're going they're going 9 kilometers per hour. Our AI estimates that these other ships are going about 10. Okay, so let's see if we can slow down to 10. We're at about 11. That's about as close as we're going to get. So we're going to match this this speed for just a minute. What I'm going to do is use some of these tools to do the manual attack on the Liberty. So right now there's no calculations that are entered, right? We know it's a Liberty class because we've already identified it using the book, but this would be a great example to see the silhouette in action, right? So you're able to look, we can zoom in even more and really get that sense that, yeah, we've got 3 different masts on the ship. We've got that central command structure. We've got both a rear and a fore kind of emplacement. So that is recognized, confirmed as a Liberty. The second tool we're going to use is the stadimeter. So the stadimeter, we're going to open it up and press E. And what this does, it looks really weird at first. It gives you a ghost ship, an image of the ship that you're actually targeting. And what you're supposed to do here is take this ship, that's the ghost ship, and you see how we've got the keel of the ship on the waterline. What you want to do is place this waterline keel right at the bottom of your ghost ship on the topmost section of the original ship. So we're kind of like right about here, because this is where the bottom of the ghost ship is touching the top mast of the original ship, right? So then we've adjusted our distance to 1 kilometer and it's been confirmed. Next, we're going to use the chronometer tool. I don't think this is, we'll see if you have to be stationary for this or not, but we're going to try just matching speeds with it. I think you might actually have to be stationary. Let's start the chronometer and see what the calculation tells us. Actually got it right at the right on the dot. So it's at about 9 kilometers per hour. Everyone else guessed that these other 2 vessels are running at about 10. So our calculation is just a tiny bit off. And if you feel like your calculation in your head is more accurate than what the tool gave you, you can just enter the value through here. Like, for example, if you do all your calculations on the map, which is completely possible, which is awesome, you can try to enter all of that information in the little section here. So the final tool you can use here is the course tool. Now what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to rotate this disc to visually match the course of your target. I'd rather use the map to do my calculations here. So we're going to use these lines of longitude to help in our calculation to find out what the angle of this ship is. So before we do much, I want to go ahead and give it a mark on where the vessel is right now. We're going to come back to that here in just a second. Now, we are still matching course, so we're not exactly like in any kind of bad spot. I'm going to speed up though because I want to be a bit ahead when I start my attack run. So we're just going to give ourselves a rough course of about maybe 10 degrees. Now, I'm going to use the north-south longitude line right here. This is kind of going to be my rough estimate of what the 0 degree heading would be. So if you're on this line heading north, this would be 0 degree bearing. Okay? The vessel that we're tracking, let's speed things up for here for just a moment. I want to make sure I give myself enough of a gap here to give a good estimate. Right, so let's go ahead and add a dot again on the ship. And I'll use my ruler to create from point 1 to point 2 and then on through it. There we go, that should be perfect. Right, so there's the intersection right here. So if I use my protractor, I don't quite know which one I'm supposed to. I think I need to go from the straight line to the intersection backwards here. This is a 10 degree angle. So in my mind, they're basically at an angle of 10 degrees. They have a course of 10 degrees. So we could go and click on the ship and change their course to 10. Now, what do the AI estimate the other people are using? 7.4 and 5.1. But I've got a bit of a more severe estimate currently. Either that means that this vessel has turned in sharper, or my math is just stupid and bad. But we'll keep a course of 10 just for fun, because we've done our first manual course correction, which is kind of cool. Adam Newman is looking at target B here, and I'm going to assign the NA1, or whatever this thing is over here, to Hilbert Kohler. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and erase a couple lines from the map. At this point, we roughly know where everyone is going to party at. And I'm going to start my attack run. So as soon as I get onto my path, I'm going to be ready to start launching torpedoes. On that note, I want to go ahead and get my engineer out of bed. And because he has the mechanic job, the first thing he's going to start doing is warming up torpedoes. So we're going to get ready to launch our torpedoes. Everything else is relatively good. I'm going to slow down my approach just a bit. And right before I attack, I will adjust any last-minute manual settings for my Liberty. So this Liberty is roughly going kind of from here through here, I think. So we're going to meet them at a roughly 90-degree intersection here. It might not be perfect, but it doesn't really need to be. It just kind of helps you out a little bit with your calculations. So he is heating up tubes 1 or 2, or whichever one he's on right now. He's just kind of heating them up. We've got our navigator, or sorry, our XO is on the attack periscope. Let's go ahead and actually move him to the observation periscope. We'll put our captain to the attack periscope. Adam Newman is on the listening post, and we'll put Jurgen on the radio. So everyone is currently doing something in preparation for this attack. Wait for the captain to get back up on the periscope. I think I'll assign a couple people here and there. It's about to be a party anyhoot, so we're pretty good. You'll see that the discipline isn't going down too much, mostly because the alarm and the bounty hunt are canceling each other out, and they're just a little bit grumpy about having a lot of work to do, which is, you know, hey, that's whatever, that's life. All right, so they're still believing that everyone is on a course of 7.4, although it's interesting that these two ships have different course adjustments. So they believe this one's going 5.1. It has a course of 5.1. This one has a course of 7.4. So it's quite possible that our good Liberty friend here does, in fact, have a course of 10. Right, finally, before we do our attack, I'm going to go ahead and get the ruler out. And I'm going to draw a line from our ship to their ship, or reverse. And I can still confirm that we're about 1,000 meters away. Now, if I were to do this, let's go roughly half this way. We're going to go till when it says 1K. I'm going to extend the line out and see that I'm roughly 1,600 meters to be exact. Can I put in 1,600? Or will it only accept the calculation of 1K at a time? Nope, it only likes the 1K at a time. So I'm hoping that it likes my estimate. But yeah, we are on basically our attack course. Our course has been set. We have rotated around. I believe we're not rotating anymore. I can check my rudder. Oh, we still are turning. So we'll wait to complete the turn. All right, our course is pretty much set at this point. I've got the ship as straight as I think I'd like to keep it. Our vessels are in front of us here. I'm going to do one final calculation on distance because everything else should roughly have stayed the same. That's all the same. I will spot check the other ships. Oops, I actually didn't mean to give them change the distance there. Okay, there we go. So the unknown ship here, the Empire Tower ship, is still at 7.4. The Far ship is at 5.1, and our ship, we're going to say, is at 10. So we're going to go ahead and try to fire off our manually configured torpedoes. The first thing I'm going to do is pull up one of the people on the periscope. So we'll take our captain here. We'll do it all from within the periscope itself. Let me zoom back out. A bearing of 0, which is our ship. We're going to bring up the torpedo tubes. I'm going to go ahead and flood tube 1 and 2. And this is going to flood this little icon here. Once this is full, these are basically ready to go. Now, you can't change the dispersion or the speed yet. So we're just going to accept what it is and say fire. Excellent. The first fish is away. The second fish is away. And our mechanic immediately started to reload our first 2 tubes. Let's take a look and see how our calculations are off the bat. Easier to see the torpedoes when they're kind of in this range here. They're a little bit ahead of the target, but I think these are going to come in just perfectly. You can see here, give that estimate farther ahead, and we're going to hit directly on target. Let's go ahead and watch the carnage from the comfort of our captain's periscope. Beautiful, right on target. 1 center strike and 1 strike on the forward part of the ship. That's exactly what we wanted to see. This thing is absolutely toasted. Super on fire. You can see that the health bar is going to start to go down slowly. Let me see if there's any other information on the ship. Sometimes it's kind of cool. You can actually see, if you click on it, it'll tell you that basically the ship is alarmed and there's a fire on board. And you can see that the health bar is going down super, super quick. I'm going to speed up just a bit. We have a new contact, an unknown group. When that happens, that just means that people are actually abandoning ship. So now there is no more threat from the Liberty vessel. Now what I'm going to do is continue my approach. And I'm going to show you, we're going to go ahead and surface right now, because at this moment, they shouldn't have had much time to react. So we still have the advantage of surprise. What I'm going to do is surface my vessel and hopefully try to avoid theirs. Let me do a pretty sharp turn to the port. There we go. We should be avoiding this wreck just fine. Perfect. what I'm going to do is go ahead and let me move a little bit more to the port side. Let's get one of our officers here on the deck. So I'm going to give them the order to use the deck gun. I'm going to wait for them to kind of climb up on deck on their own. And what I'm going to do is take control by zooming in to my good friend here. I'm actually going to turn off the selection of targets. This is kind of where you can tell your deck gun to either automatically fire at aircraft or at enemy ships. Now, I found that the AI firing is absolutely horrible, so I'm going to pretty much control everything here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to aim for the water line on these other ships in a couple of the same areas. I'm going to try to do the same shot in the same location. He gave you a couple crew members to help you with the reload speed. I accidentally canceled his job. Sometimes I just try to pick a spot like below the mast, so even if it's dark outside, I know exactly where I've tried to fire before. We are using AP rounds, by the way, so these are penetrating the hull. A little bit hard to see, but you should start seeing a hole appear in the enemy vessel, and right there you can kind of see inside of it. Let me go ahead and slow down our ship quite a bit. We're kind of blowing past the enemy there. There we go. One of their masts has fallen over. You can see that the ship is listing to port, so it is getting water. I don't know what this SS round, I think it's like a sulfur round. Let's see if we can't fire it inside the hole we made. Or I can just fire it directly, you know, into nothing. Yeah, I still don't really know what the SS round does. I kind of thought it was, at first, a sulfur round, that it would just kind of burn through something. Then I thought it was more of a kind of a flare, but it doesn't seem to have any kind of a lighting effect either. So, not super confident in what exactly it is. You can zoom out a bit to see the overall damage of the ship you've targeted. So I normally will get a couple of shots in. If it's really heavily listing to one side, I normally pretty much call that a win. We're really, really close to this thing. There's no reason to be this close to it, but hey, it's fun. All right, finally, that's our second victim here. We're going to zoom back into our deck gun and finish off this enemy fleet. Let's go ahead and go over to AP rounds one more time. Now, the reason I do this instead of torpedoes is, again, you're going to be on patrol for quite a good amount of time. You don't want to blow all of your torpedoes on your first batch of enemies. It's always useful to save your torpedoes for the more dangerous vessels like the Liberty. The Liberty is a 7,000-ton vessel, so a very, very lucrative target. By the way, since we did sink the Liberty, we have the option of sending a message home to basically say, hey, we've sunk our target. So if I click on the Liberty sunk icon here, our radio man will start to transmit that message home, and we'll earn a bit of credits right off the bat. I'm going to keep poking our good friend. It's got a very, very small ship, so this shouldn't be too hard at all. There's actually someone standing, if you can see that. There's someone standing on the deck of their ship, and I don't think we can do anything about it. It's really funny. He's basically Thor, just kind of hanging out up on deck here. Let's the guy in the red shirt. We can pretty much shoot at him. We can stab him. We go, oh god. We're going right towards the target. Can we turn a little bit, please? I'll go ahead and engage my reverse engines a bit, too, because slowing down by just turning your engines off is not a very fast way to move your ship. But that was pretty good. We stopped in a heartbeat. Now, this ship is listing a bit. Let's continue to poke it a bit. Sometimes they do really funny mechanics. Like the ship, you'll strike it once with your round, and it will, like, bounce up in the air and reset itself and stop listing to one particular side. It's so bizarre, but they are working out a lot of the physics problems. There we go. See, it's almost like we unlocked it from sinking on one particular side. But honestly, already the game is looking gorgeous. I mean, look at the destruction effects are super satisfying. You can start fires on vessels by shooting different parts of it, and it is just super fun to mess around with. The final vessel here is going to go full damage mode, it looks like. I'm going to just go ahead and let it sink for a minute. Nope, it's not quite all the way sinking. It looks like it almost is, but we're going to go ahead and say, finish this bad boy off. I love that. Shoot once, and it, like, resets the entire ship. I have no idea why that works. I have blown a lot of rounds on this vessel. Normally, all I have to do is focus my fire on one particular area, and the ship will sink pretty quickly. There we go. It's actually going to go over, I think, this time. Maybe. It's like the immortal ship that never dies. There it goes. It is going all the way over and then down. So yeah, that was our first major attack on a convoy. A couple of things to keep in mind. If this would have been a convoy with an escort, what I would have done is I would have fired my initial salvo of torpedoes and immediately lowered the periscope and dove under the surface. So that would keep you from, getting any kind of enemies right on your tail. Keep in mind, if your ship gets damaged, you will get an indicator where the damage is. So if you have damage, especially if you have a hole in the ship, so say a depth charge lands really close to you, you'll have a symbol to repair it. What I would immediately do is order one of your crew members who is an engineer to go to your cabinet and pick themselves up the breathing apparatus. Very, very important before they do any repairs. Once they have that, you can comfortably have them repair whatever room in the ship is damaged. We can also close down the bulkhead to keep the water from flowing into the rest of the ship. The other thing to keep in mind is that you will obviously start getting water in the ship as any kind of leak. So there is also a pump here that you can enable to kind of send water from inside of your ship to the outside. And if anyone gets injured, there are some med kits hanging around, I think in this bulkhead storage room. Or sorry, not bulkhead, but the storage room behind the galley. And I think to get in here, you have to go into first person mode. Are you cuddling bread? Oh, you're eating cheese. Okay, fair. That's weird. But yeah, if you wanted to get the first aid kits, you'd have to go run in here, grab the first aid kit, and then you could treat any soldiers, or sorry, any sailors who are in critical shape. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me and the crew of U-96 on our maiden voyage. We have managed to sink a good amount of tonnage, and I hope that this tutorial has been informative for you. If you have any questions about the game, please let me know in the comments below. Do keep in mind, though, that the game is, in fact, in early access. So it is going to have things change over time. So if you like this tutorial, I do make more tutorials and other Let's Play videos, so feel free to join us as a subscriber. I would appreciate your viewage. And if you'd like to join our community, we have a Discord link in the link below, the Read More section below this table of contents down here. And also, if you'd like to support the channel and help me pay bills, feed the dogs, and buy more Monster Energy drinks, go ahead and check out the Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you all so much for joining me for this tutorial. I hope this has been informative, and I'd like to thank you for watching.